All right, so our analysis was based on BP's marketing campaign with respect to the Gulf oil spill, specifically in the context of the economic damages settlement of the process. So we're not looking at the environmental side of it, we're focusing our analysis on the economic side of it. And we'd like you to pretend to be BP Board of Directors, and we are an outside consulting firm that you've hired to advise you on this issue. Seem good?
That's great.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome. My name is Eric Potts, and together with my colleague Garrett Purdy, we are here today to represent Strategic Marketing Consultants. I would like to once again thank you, the BP Board of Directors, for hiring us to provide ethical solutions regarding the questions arising in the aftermath of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. As I'm sure you know by now, on April 20th, 2010, a methane gas bubble ignited, exploding the entire Deepwater Horizon rig, taking the lives immediately of 11 people. And over the course of the next 87 days, over 4.9 million gallons of oil flooded the Gulf. This moment marked the start of an extensive marketing campaign by BP to both bring tourism back to the Gulf of Mexico and also to increase BP's own public relations. It's important for it to provide a context. It's important to provide a background of context for which any ethical questions around this event can be based against. Primarily, BP's own mission statement. In this mission statement, BP makes a very careful case of outlining its obligation to respect not only its employees and consumers, but also any individuals and relations in the community it operates in. Specifically, BP must respect these relationships in an attempt to promote its own relationships with BP.
Right, so we know that your company has had issues with transparency. So before we get into that, we have to define what is transparency. And so in this context, we're defining transparency as making public any information as to your decision-making processes and operations to people in the communities in which you work. So this problem has manifested itself in a few ways, the most important of which are as follows. First of all, the amount of oil that initially spilled into the Gulf was misrepresented. Second of all, the process by which money can be claimed by individuals and businesses from this economic settlement fund was made intentionally convoluted. And third, reporters and photographers were blocked from visiting beaches so as not to be able to accurately report on the amount of damage. So we know you've taken steps to address all those issues. However, we feel you can do more. And the key word in this discussion is honesty. And so we say that honesty is so important because you are not just operating as a company, you are operating within a community all over the world. But with respect to this community, your actions directly affect either their well-being in good ways or in bad ways. And they need to be able to understand your decision-making processes when your decisions are this important to their livelihood. And this, not only being honest, but by being absolutely forthcoming with all of your information, what you're doing is you're showing respect to these people that you operate. And by doing that, not only you're saying, okay, here's everything we're doing, do with it what you will. You're saying, you're inviting them on board to the decision-making process and to try and open a dialogue and have a working relationship and a long-term partnership that I think is important for you. So, the thing I want you to take away from that is you have to respect the communities in which you operate if you want any long-term economic partnership, and you do not want to be seen as a foreign entity coming in just to extract resources.
And the important question to discuss moving forward is how can BP's marketing be used as a means to promote a sense of corporate citizenship? Now, the second ethical question which we'd like to address is it ethically permissible for BP to display its logo at the end of advertisements promoting the Gulf Coast region? I'm sure by now many of you are familiar with those advertisements promoting people to get back down to the coast, the beaches are clean, everything's wonderful. But at the end of these commercials, BP has chosen to display its logo. This has been met with a lot of criticism by people who believe that BP is running these commercials with the sole intent of picking up its own public identity and not so much to bring back the Gulf Coast region tourism. The common argument is that BP has an obligation to bring up its shareholders, it has an obligation to bring up its board of directors and its employees. And by bring up, of course, I mean benefit these people. At the same time, they have an obligation to bring back tourism revenue. And what better way to do it than to do it at the same time in a single commercial? This argument would hold water However, while BP has given $179 million specifically to these tourism management campaigns, they have spent almost $500 million on their own marketing campaigns. Clearly, there's a misrepresentation of what BP should be doing and what they are doing. Therefore, in order for BP to act ethically, it would make more sense for them to take more money out of their own marketing and place it into tourism marketing specifically generated toward the Gulf Coast region.
So a further question has to be asked is it ethical for BP to try and put a cap on the amount of damage that's going to go through the future economic damage settlement fund? And we say, yes, that is ethical. Despite BP's your senior role in making the crisis happen, it is ethical if certain conditions are met. And the biggest one is that you need to take responsibility for your past actions and for your senior role in creating this mess. And so what you need to do is try and create a situation whereby the region returns to its pre-spill norms. And this is done through three ways. First, you need to ensure that the beaches are in fact clean. That's very important. Second of all, you need to pay for marketing costs, as we've already said, of these states that have had to pull out of their own coffers to pay for marketing campaigns for a crisis that they had no part in creating. And third, you need to look at addressing past economic damages, loss of revenue, loss for businesses, for individuals, and for municipal governments that occurred as a direct result of the spill. And in addition to that, you have to look at certain cases of future economic damages that are not fraudulent, and the ones that are potentially could be as a direct result of the spill. Now, this is ethically a good decision because you will take full responsibility for your past actions. You will make sure to try and address the question so as to make sure that this area returns to its pre-spill norms. And this is done by putting all of your attention on making sure that the humans in your communities which you work with are flourishing. You want to make sure there's human flourishing by trying to make whole what you've taken away from those communities and by addressing lingering issues that may be still as a direct result of the spills that you had a direct cause in.
And the fourth and final question we'll be answering is, does BP have an ethical obligation to pay money to areas of the Gulf Coast which were not physically impacted by the oil spill? And by this, I'm talking about areas such as West Florida, which while they suffered incredible economic damages, no oil reached the beaches. The problem is, a lot of the public did not realize that the west coast of Florida was perfectly clean, because in the aftermath of the spill, the media was making gross generalizations such as things along the lines of, the Gulf Coast is covered in oil. Well, the media did not specifically mean set out to slander the west coast of Florida. The result is there that all the same. Now, there is an argument that BP does not have a moral obligation to make reparations. These people would say that because the west coast of Florida did not have any oil, they were in the best position of the bunch. Places like Louisiana could not attract tourism because they had oil on their beaches. And because Florida did not have this oil, they were in a great position. They could attract all the tourism they wanted. This argument seems a little far-fetched when we consider that small counties on the west coast of Florida could not possibly have the marketing budget to get by all this white noise of what the media was saying generally about the Gulf Coast and say, come here, our beaches are clean. And because Florida lost tourism revenue in the process, BP has an obligation to make right what their actions took away from the Gulf Coast and make a sense of whole again.
All right, so given all that, the question has to be asked, why is it important? Why should you care about ethics? And we say you should absolutely care about ethics for many reasons. First of all, you do have an obligation to respect the communities in which you're working, and you have to make sure that the people in those are flourishing. You must also have to be held accountable for your actions, because your actions, whether good or bad, directly affect the people that you're working with. And especially if they're bad, they have to make sure they're on board with the decision process to try and fix it. Also, you do have to make a conscious effort to respect and understand the positions, opinions, and often criticisms of the people in the communities you're working with towards your practices. And doing that will help engender good relations and, again, will help open this dialogue between the communities you're working with that you want to forge a partnership with and yourself. So, what have we told you? We've said that transparency is necessary because it shows respect to the people that you're working with. We've said that in terms of using the logo, yes, it is ethical, but only if you financially prioritize the state's marketing campaigns that they had to undertake as a direct result of the oil spill that was most probably caused by you with some other companies, but you had the most proximate cause. In addition, you have to make whole what you've taken away from these areas. You have to address economic damages, you have to address environmental damages, and that's even included in places such as Florida that were not physically directed by this oil spill, they still had economic damages. So, what I hope you take away from this is that it's absolutely necessary to take into account ethical considerations because your company is under spotlight internationally as a result of these recent events. And so you have to hold yourself up to a higher standard ethically than any of your competitors. Thank you.